I crash-landed on Earth, not knowing it was humanity's homeworld. Commander HFY pulled himself from the wreckage of his scout ship, the taste of copper filling his mouth as he spat out what he hoped was just his own blood. The ship's emergency beacon flickered weakly behind him, casting strange shadows across the alien landscape. His forearms moved automatically, checking for injuries while his compound eyes adjusted to the peculiar yellow star overhead. This was supposed to be a routine reconnaissance mission to catalog another backwater planet in the Outer Rim territories. The Galactic Consortium's star charts had marked this system as uninhabited, containing only a single yellow dwarf star with several rocky planets. Nothing special, nothing worth a second glance. Now, as HFY stood among the twisted metal that had once been his pride and joy, he realized those charts were catastrophically wrong. The air was breathable, which was fortunate since his environmental suit had been punctured in 3 places during the crash. The gravity was slightly heavier than his homeworld, but manageable. What concerned him most was the evident signs of civilization he could see in the distance. Tall structures reached toward the sky, and strange vessels moved along what appeared to be transportation networks. As a veteran scout of the hegemony's 4th exploration fleet, HFY had encountered dozens of primitive civilizations. Most were still hitting rocks together or had just discovered fire. A few had managed basic metallurgy. Only twice in his 30-year career had he found species that had developed spaceflight, and both times they had barely managed to escape their own gravity wells. This planet, however, showed signs of advanced engineering that made his mandibles click nervously. His communication device crackled to life, startling him. "This is air traffic control to unidentified aircraft. You are in restricted airspace. Please respond with your flight plan and authorization codes." HFY's translator struggled with the alien language for a moment before settling on what seemed to be the local dominant tongue. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its implications. These beings had organized air traffic control. They had restricted airspace. They were tracking his crashed vessel. Before he could formulate a response, the sound of approaching aircraft filled the air. HFY looked up to see several flying machines approaching his position. They moved with a grace and speed that suggested advanced propulsion systems, far beyond what he would expect from a species not yet in the Galactic Consortium's database. The lead aircraft touched down nearby with barely a whisper of sound. Its design was sleek, efficient, and incorporated materials that HFY couldn't immediately identify. The craft's occupants emerged wearing protective suits that spoke of a sophisticated understanding of hazardous material protocols. "Remain calm," one of the suited figures called out, approaching with hands raised in what HFY's cultural database suggested was a peaceful gesture. "We're here to help. Are you injured?" The being removed its helmet, revealing a bipedal creature with bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes that suggested a predator species, and skin that appeared to be some sort of adaptive covering rather than natural hide or chitin. Most remarkably, the creature showed no obvious signs of fear or aggressive posturing despite encountering an clearly alien life form. "I am Commander HFY of the Hegemony 4th Exploration Fleet," he managed to say, his translator working overtime to convert his clicks and hisses into something approximating their language. "My vessel experienced catastrophic system failure. I require immediate communication with my fleet command." The human, for that's what they called themselves, as he would soon learn, smiled. It was an expression that showed their impressive dental development, another mark of a predator species. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, and this is my team from the Emergency Response Division. Don't worry about contacting your people right now. Let's get you checked out first. Then we'll see what we can do about communications." As they led him toward their aircraft, HFY's tactical mind cataloged everything he observed. Their technology showed a sophistication that suggested they were far more advanced than the consortium's intelligence indicated. Their organization and rapid response to his crash demonstrated military-grade efficiency. Most concerning of all, they treated his arrival not as a first contact situation, but as a routine emergency response. "How many of us have you encountered before?" ZXHY asked as they helped him into their aircraft. Dr. Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues. "Us? None that I'm aware of. But we've had protocols in place for this kind of situation for decades. Our government tends to plan for contingencies." The aircraft lifted off with a smoothness that spoke of gravitic manipulation technology. As they flew toward what appeared to be a major population center, ZXHY stared out the window at the landscape below. Massive agricultural areas stretched to the horizon, cross-crossed with transportation networks that showed careful planning and resource management. Industrial complexes dotted the terrain, some of which appeared to be conducting operations that his sensors couldn't even categorize. "What is the name of your world?" he asked. "Earth," Dr. Chen replied, "though I suspect you might know it by a different designation in your star charts." "We have no designation for this system," ZXHY admitted. "Our surveys indicated it was uninhabited." "Your surveys were wrong," said another team member, a male with darker skin pigmentation. "Very wrong. This planet has been inhabited by our species for over 200,000 years. We've had recorded civilization for roughly 12,000 years, and we've been studying the stars for most of that time." The implications hit ZXHY like a plasma bolt to the thorax. A species that had been studying the stars for 12 millennia would have developed astronomy, mathematics, and quite possibly space travel. Yet they appeared in no consortium records. That suggested either a massive intelligence failure or something far more concerning. "Have you achieved interstellar travel?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Chen smiled again, and this time ZXHY noticed that the expression didn't reach her eyes. "Define interstellar travel." Before he could respond, the aircraft began its descent toward a facility that defied every assumption ZXHY had made about primitive civilizations. The complex sprawled across several square kilometers, with buildings that incorporated architectural principles he recognized from the most advanced species in the consortium. Energy signatures indicated power generation capabilities that rivaled small space stations. As they landed, ZXHY saw other aircraft coming and going with a frequency that suggested routine operations rather than emergency responses. Ground vehicles moved with purpose between buildings, and personnel went about their duties with the kind of disciplined efficiency he associated with major military installations. "Welcome to Area 51, Dr. Chen said as they disembarked. "I think you're going to find your stay here very educational." The facility's personnel moved with practiced precision, suggesting they had dealt with situations like this before. As they escorted him toward the main complex, ZXHY noticed that many of the humans carried themselves with the bearing of combat veterans. Their equipment, while unfamiliar in design, showed clear indicators of military-grade manufacturing. Inside the facility, ZXHY's compound eyes widened at displays showing what could only be star charts. But these weren't the crude, stellar observations of a primitive species. These charts showed accurate positions of star systems extending far beyond this local region, with notations that suggested detailed knowledge of galactic structure. "How long have your people been monitoring galactic civilization?" he asked. "That's an interesting question," replied a new voice. ZXHY turned to see an older human approaching, his bearing suggesting command authority. "I'm Director Matthews. Why don't you tell me about this galactic consortium of yours, and then perhaps we can discuss how long we've been aware of it." The blood in ZXHY's veins turned to ice water. These humans knew about the consortium, they had known, and yet they appeared in no official records. A species capable of interstellar travel, with knowledge of galactic civilization, maintaining complete operational security for what could be centuries. "You're not a primitive species at all," he whispered. Director Matthews's smile was cold and calculating. "Commander, Earth hasn't been primitive for a very long time. The question is, why does your consortium think we are?" The Revelation Director Matthews led HFY through corridors that hummed with barely contained energy. The walls displayed star charts that made the commander's mandibles click in nervous recognition. These weren't just local stellar observations. They were detailed intelligence reports on consortium military positions, trade routes, and political structures. "You've been watching us," HFY said, his forearms unconsciously shifting into a defensive posture. "For about 300 years, give or take a decade," Matthews replied casually, as if discussing the weather. "Ever since your people first started their expansion into what you call the Outer Rim territories. They stopped before a massive display that showed the galactic spiral in three-dimensional detail. Red markers indicated consortium worlds, blue showed independent systems, and green marked what the legends identified as human interest zones." HFY's compound eyes widened as he realized the green markers formed a rough sphere around the Sol system, extending outward for nearly 50 light years. "This is impossible," he breathed. "Humanity isn't even in our databases. You're supposed to be pre-space flight." Dr. Chen, who had been following silently, spoke up. "We've worked very hard to maintain that impression. It's been one of our most successful intelligence operations." Matthews gestured to a technician, who began pulling up files on nearby displays. "Let me show you something interesting, Commander. These are consortium survey records for the Sol system, dating back 250 years. The documents appeared in the air before them, holographic projections that made HFY's technical mind analyze the display technology even as he processed their content. The reports were exactly what he would expect from routine stellar surveys. Uninhabited system, single yellow star, several rocky planets, no signs of intelligent life. "These surveys were conducted by your people," Matthews continued. "All of them returned negative results for intelligent life. Would you like to know why?" Before HFY could respond, the displays changed to show surveillance footage of what appeared to be consortium survey vessels approaching the Sol system. In each case, the ships were intercepted by craft that seemed to materialize from empty space. The alien vessels were sleek, predatory, and moved with an aggressive grace that spoke of superior technology. "Stealth technology," HFY whispered. "You've been intercepting our surveys." "Not intercepting," Dr. Chen corrected. "Redirecting. We've developed very sophisticated holographic projection systems. Your survey team saw exactly what we wanted them to see. A boring, uninhabited system not worth a second look." The implications crashed over HFY like a collapsing star. "How many of our survey teams have you redirected?" "All of them," Matthews said simply. "Every single consortium vessel that has approached this system in the past 2.5 centuries has been given a carefully crafted false reading. Your people leave convinced they've thoroughly surveyed an empty system." A new voice joined the conversation from behind them. "It's quite an operation," said a tall human with graying hair and piercing blue eyes. "I'm Admiral Harrison, Strategic Operations Command. We've been perfecting the technique for generations." HFY turned to face the newcomer, his tactical mind automatically assessing potential threats. Admiral Harrison carried himself with the bearing of a combat veteran, and the way other personnel deferred to him suggested significant authority within their hierarchy. "You're military," HFY stated. "We're all military in one sense or another," Harrison replied. "Earth has been on a war footing for 3 centuries, Commander, ever since we first detected consortium expansion heading toward our region of space." The displays around them shifted again, showing what appeared to be construction projects on a massive scale. Space-based installations orbited not just Earth, but every planet in the system. Asteroid mining operations stretched throughout the belt, and massive shipyard facilities floated in the outer system, where they would be invisible to conventional scans. "This is a fortress system," HFY realized, his voice barely above a whisper. "The most heavily defended system in this galaxy," Admiral Harrison confirmed. "We've spent 3 centuries preparing for the day when the consortium decided to expand into human space." Dr. Chen activated another display, this one showing ship designs that made HFY's chitin crawl. The vessels were sleek, angular, and incorporated technology that his engineering background told him was decades beyond anything the consortium possessed. Weapons systems lined their hulls with the kind of redundancy that spoke of beings who had studied warfare as a science. "How many ships?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Enough," Matthews said simply. "But ship counts aren't what should concern you, Commander. What should concern you is that we've been studying consortium technology, tactics, and strategic doctrine for 300 years. We know everything about how your people fight." Admiral Harrison gestured to a tactical display that showed consortium fleet movements throughout the local galactic region. "We've been monitoring your communications, tracking your supply lines, analyzing your battle doctrine. Every engagement the consortium has fought in the past century, we've studied in detail." "You've been preparing for war," HFY said, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "We've been preparing for survival," Dr. Chen corrected. "The consortium's expansion pattern suggested they would reach our space eventually. We had a choice. Be discovered as a primitive species and incorporated into your empire, or be ready to defend ourselves." The displays shifted once more, showing detailed analysis of consortium weapons technology, armor systems, and tactical formations. The level of detail was staggering. They knew the exact specifications of ships HFY had served on, including classified information that should have been impossible for an outside species to obtain. "How?" he asked. "How do you know all this?" Admiral Harrison exchanged glances with the others. "Because we've been out there, Commander. Human intelligence operatives have been infiltrating consortium space for over a century." New images appeared showing beings that HFY's database identified as various consortium species. But as he looked closer, he began to notice subtle inconsistencies in their anatomy, small details that suggested they weren't quite what they appeared to be. "Surgical modification," Dr. Chen explained, noting his scrutiny, "combined with advanced prosthetics and neural implants. We've become very good at appearing to be other species." "Your operatives have been living among us," HFY said, the full scope of human intelligence gathering finally becoming clear. "For decades," Matthews confirmed. "They've served on consortium vessels, worked in research facilities, even held positions in military command structures. Everything we know about your civilization comes from direct observation and experience." The room fell silent as HFY processed this information. The consortium, the mighty galactic empire that had absorbed hundreds of species over millennia, had been completely infiltrated by a species they didn't even know existed. The strategic implications were staggering. "What do you want?" he finally asked. Admiral Harrison stepped forward, his expression serious. "What we've always wanted, Commander, to be left alone. Earth is our home, and we intend to keep it that way. The question is whether that's possible through diplomacy or whether it will require more direct methods. The consortium will never accept an unknown species controlling strategic territory," HFY said. "When they discover what you are, they'll send the full force of the hegemony fleets." "Will they?" Dr. Chen asked. Because from our perspective, the consortium has a choice to make. They can acknowledge human sovereignty over our traditional space and continue their expansion in other directions. Or they can discover just how effectively a species can defend itself when it has 3 centuries to prepare. Matthews activated a final display, this one showing the positions of human vessels throughout nearby space. The deployment pattern was brilliant: hidden bases, stealth patrol routes, and supply depots positioned to control all approaches to the Sol system. It was the work of strategic minds that had studied every aspect of galactic warfare. "Your crash landing here wasn't an accident," Admiral Harrison said quietly. "We've been monitoring consortium patrol routes for months. We knew your ship would pass through this system, and we knew it was operating alone, far from support." The blood drained from ZXHY's face as understanding dawned. "You sabotaged my ship." "We gave it a little help experiencing catastrophic system failure," Matthews confirmed. "We needed a consortium officer to deliver a message to your superiors, someone credible, someone who could speak with authority about what they found here." "What message?" ZXHY asked, though he suspected he already knew. Admiral Harrison's smile was cold and utterly without mercy. "Tell them that Earth is under the protection of humanity. Tell them that any attempt to survey, explore, or claim this system will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. And tell them that we know where all their major fleet bases are located." The final display activated, showing detailed intelligence on consortium shipyard facilities, supply depots, and command centers. The information was current, accurate, and comprehensive enough to plan targeted strikes on every critical military installation within 100 light years. "You're threatening the entire consortium," ZXHY breathed. "We're establishing boundaries," Dr. Chen corrected. "Humanity doesn't seek conquest or expansion. We simply want our space respected." As the displays shut down, leaving them in the sterile lighting of the briefing room, ZXHY realized that everything the consortium thought it knew about galactic power structures was about to change. A species had emerged from hiding with technology, intelligence capabilities, and strategic planning that could challenge the established order. "How do I explain this to my superiors?" he asked. Admiral Harrison handed him a small device that hummed with contained energy. "This contains complete technical specifications for one of our stealth systems, not our best technology, but impressive enough to prove our capabilities. It also contains coordinates for a location where consortium representatives can meet with human diplomats, should your government choose the path of negotiation. And if they choose otherwise." The Admiral's expression didn't change. "Then they'll discover why humanity has survived everything this galaxy has thrown at us for 200,000 years. The choice. 3 months after Commander ZXHY's return to consortium space, Admiral Harrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital defense platform, watching long-range sensors track the approach of the largest fleet deployment in consortium history. Over 600 vessels of varying classes were decelerating toward the Sol system, their formation speaking of military precision and overwhelming force. "Reconnaissance reports confirm it's the 3rd, 7th, and 9th hegemony battle groups," reported Captain Sarah Chen, her promotion reflecting Earth's rapid military expansion since first contact. "Full combat deployment, including their newest Dreadnought-class vessels." Harrison nodded grimly. "I was hoping Commander ZXHY would be more persuasive with his superiors." The diplomatic channel crackled to life, filling the command center with the translated voice of Fleet Admiral Kethvar, the consortium's most decorated military commander. "Unknown occupants of the Sol system. This is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Consortium Hegemony Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and submit to lawful incorporation into consortium territory. Failure to comply will result in the pacification of your system." Harrison stepped up to the communications array, his voice calm and professional. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Admiral Harrison, Strategic Defense Command, Earth. Your forces have entered sovereign human space without authorization. You have 30 minutes to reverse course and depart this system. A harsh laugh echoed through the speakers. Your species will not dictate terms to the Galactic Consortium. We have investigated your claims and found them to be the desperate bluffs of a primitive species attempting to avoid inevitable subjugation. On the tactical display, the Consortium fleet continued its approach, their formations spreading out to surround the inner system. Their confidence was evident in their movement patterns. They expected no meaningful resistance from what they assumed was a single planet of upstart primitives. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "they're deploying siege formations around all the inner planets. Standard consortium doctrine for pacifying resistant populations." Harrison exchanged glances with Captain Chen. "Have they detected our fleet positions?" "Negative. All stealth systems are operating at full efficiency. The enemy sensors are reading empty space." The Admiral activated the command frequency, transmitting to the carefully concealed human fleet positioned throughout the system. "All units maintain stealth protocols. Weapons to standby. Wait for my signal." On the display, the consortium fleet took up positions that would allow them to bombard any planet in the system while maintaining formation integrity. It was a textbook deployment, one that had proven effective against dozens of primitive species over the centuries. Admiral Kethvar's voice returned. "I will give you this one opportunity to avoid unnecessary casualties. Surrender now, and your species will be granted provisional membership in the consortium. Continue this defiance, and your world will be pacified by force." Harrison stepped forward to respond, but stopped as a new signal appeared on the long-range sensors. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Chen frowned at her displays. "Additional consortium vessels approaching from the galactic core. Much smaller force. Looks like a diplomatic escort." The new arrival transmitted on open frequencies. "Admiral Kethvar, this is High Counselor Vexithara of the Consortium Diplomatic Corps. You will halt all military operations immediately and withdraw to minimum safe distance." The bridge fell silent as they listened to what was clearly an internal consortium power struggle playing out across their communication systems. "High Counselor," Admiral Kethvar replied, his tone carefully controlled. "The military assessment indicates these humans pose no significant threat to consortium security. Standard pacification protocols are appropriate." "Admiral," came the diplomatic vessel's response, "your military assessment failed to account for several critical factors that have recently come to our attention." On the tactical display, Harrison watched the diplomatic ship approach the main fleet. Whatever conversation was happening on private consortium channels was clearly intense, as the fleet's formation began to shift uncertainly. "Sir," reported the intelligence officer, "we're detecting massive data transfers from the diplomatic vessel to the fleet command ships. Looks like they're sharing intelligence reports." Harrison allowed himself a slight smile. "Intelligence reports about what? I wonder." The answer came 20 minutes later when High Counselor Vexithara requested a direct communication channel with Earth's leadership. "Admiral Harrison, I am High Counselor Vexithara. I must inform you that we have recently become aware of certain discrepancies in our intelligence regarding human capabilities." "What kind of discrepancies?" Harrison asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Our Deep Intelligence Division has discovered evidence of human operatives embedded within consortium military and civilian structures for the past century. The scope of this infiltration suggests capabilities we had not previously appreciated." Captain Chen monitored the tactical displays as the consortium fleet's formation continued to shift. Several ships were powering down weapon systems, while others maintained aggressive postures. The fleet was clearly divided on how to proceed. "Additionally," the High Counselor continued, "we have received disturbing reports from our research divisions regarding certain technological specifications your Commander Zexhai provided. Our scientists indicate that the stealth technology alone represents an advancement beyond our current capabilities. Admiral Harrison activated a display showing human fleet positions throughout the system. High Counselor, in the interest of avoiding unnecessary bloodshed, I'm going to share our actual defensive positions with your fleet. The transmission went out on all consortium frequencies, and the response was immediate. Alarms began sounding across the enemy fleet as their sensors suddenly detected over 300 human vessels that had been invisible moments before. The ships appeared from every direction, hidden in asteroid fields, cloaked behind planetary bodies, and concealed in the outer system's debris clouds. Impossible. Admiral Kethvar's voice cut across the channel. No species could deploy that many vessels without detection. Admiral, Harrison replied calmly, you detected exactly what we wanted you to detect. Our actual fleet strength is considerably larger than what you're seeing now. On cue, additional human vessels decloaked throughout the system. Massive dreadnoughts emerged from behind planets, escort squadrons materialized from seemingly empty space, and orbital weapon platforms revealed themselves around every major body in the system. The display showed a defensive network that had been designed and constructed over 3 centuries of careful preparation. The silence from the consortium fleet stretched for several minutes before High Counselor Vexthara spoke again. Admiral Harrison, I believe a diplomatic solution to this situation would serve everyone's interests. I agree completely, Harrison replied. Humanity has no desire for conflict with the consortium. We simply wish to maintain sovereignty over our traditional space. Admiral Kethvar's voice cut in, filled with barely controlled rage. The consortium does not negotiate with primitive species. These humans will submit to lawful authority or face the consequences. What happened next demonstrated why High Counselor Vexthara held her position. Admiral Kethvar, you are hereby relieved of command. Commander Yilseth will assume fleet command and begin immediate withdrawal to the edge of this system. The power shift was dramatic and immediate. The consortium fleet began repositioning, weapons powering down as the new commander took control. Within an hour, the massive force had withdrawn to the system's outer edge, maintaining a respectful distance from human positions. Admiral Harrison, High Counselor Vexthara transmitted, I propose a formal diplomatic meeting to establish boundaries and protocols between our civilizations. The consortium has no interest in costly military campaigns against prepared opponents. Harrison smiled as he watched the tactical display. The consortium fleet maintained perfect formation, but their weapons remained powered down. High Counselor, we would welcome diplomatic discussions. However, I think it's important that your government understand exactly what they're dealing with. The display shifted to show intelligence summaries that human operatives had compiled over the past century. Fleet dispositions, military capabilities, political structures, economic vulnerabilities, everything the consortium thought was secret had been carefully cataloged and analyzed by human intelligence services. The consortium has impressive military capabilities, Harrison continued. But warfare isn't just about ship counts and weapon strength. It's about intelligence, planning, and choosing your battles carefully. Humanity has been studying galactic warfare for 3 centuries. We know how to fight, when to fight, and most importantly, how to win. A new voice joined the conversation. Commander Zexhai, speaking from the diplomatic vessel. High Counselor, I've spent 3 months studying human defensive preparations. Their capabilities exceed our worst-case projections by several orders of magnitude. Explain, Vexthara replied. They don't just have ships and weapons, Zexhai said. They have a complete intelligence picture of consortium operations throughout this galactic region. They know where our supply bases are located, our fleet rotation schedules, our communications protocols. If this escalates to open warfare, they won't just defend this system. They'll strike at targets throughout consortium space. The implications hung heavy over the communication channels. The consortium had encountered resistant species before, but never one that possessed both the capability and intelligence to carry the fight beyond their home system. "Admiral Harrison," High Counselor Vexathera said finally, "what are humanity's terms?" Harrison looked out at the stars, thinking of the 300 years his species had spent preparing for this moment. Recognition of human sovereignty over a 50-light-year sphere centered on Sol. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between our governments. And mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs. In exchange for continued peaceful coexistence. Humanity will respect consortium space beyond our agreed boundaries and will share selected technological innovations that could benefit both our peoples. The silence stretched for nearly an hour as the consortium leadership deliberated. When High Counselor Vexathera finally responded, her tone was formal and decisive. The Galactic Consortium hereby recognizes the sovereign territory of humanity over the region designated as the Sol Defense Zone. We propose immediate establishment of diplomatic missions and the negotiation of formal treaties governing interaction between our civilizations. Admiral Harrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched the consortium fleet begin its withdrawal from human space. "High Counselor, we look forward to a long and peaceful relationship between our peoples." As the enemy vessels departed, Captain Chen stepped up beside him at the observation window. "Sir, do you think they'll honor the agreement?" Harrison watched the last of the consortium ships disappear into hyperspace. "They'll honor it because they're smart enough to recognize when they've encountered a superior opponent. The consortium built their empire by absorbing weaker species. They know the difference between a conquest and a war." The displays around them showed human vessels throughout the system beginning to stand down from combat alert. After 3 centuries of preparation, humanity had finally revealed itself to the galaxy and emerged victorious without firing a shot. "Besides," Harrison added with a slight smile, "now that we've established diplomatic relations, our intelligence operatives won't need to maintain their covers anymore. The consortium is about to discover just how much we've learned about them over the past century." As Earth's defense network returned to routine patrol status, Admiral Harrison knew that humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage. The consortium would spread word of human capabilities throughout their territory, and other species would take note. The galaxy had a new power to reckon with, one that had emerged from the shadows fully prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human influence was about to begin.